Does Nirvana's In Utero hold up today? Released on September the 21st, 1993, In Utero was Nirvana's third and final studio album. It was an album designed to fight against the very machine that the previous year had made them a success. Gone were the pop-infused polished hooks of Nevermind. In its place, a sonic gut punch that's abrasive, distorted approach took the band back towards their earlier underground sound. Now, 32 years later, we're digging into this iconic beast of a record to find out, was In Utero misunderstood and really Nirvana's ultimate masterpiece? What was the reception from the critics? And what do people think 30 plus years later? So let's dive in. By early 1993, Nirvana were living every rock star's fantasy. The band had sold over 10 million copies worldwide in less than 2 years, grunge had exploded into the mainstream, and Kurt Cobain was suddenly an icon. But things behind the scenes were less than ideal. The stratospheric level of fame may sound like the dream, but it came at a price. Mounting media scrutiny, substance abuse, and growing tensions within the band. The press became obsessed with the relationship between Kurt and Courtney Love. In 1992, Vanity Fair released an article on Courtney Love, claiming that she had used heroin while pregnant with their daughter Frances Bean. A report that led to Child Protective Services temporarily placing Frances in the custody of Courtney's sister. Because of this whole controversy, Kurt was constantly asked about his drug use, his mental health, and his marriage, even in interviews meant to focus on his music. Rumours and news of his drug use and mental state was so damning that it led to one of the most iconic moments in rock. During the 1992 Reading Festival, where Nirvana headlined, rumours swelled that Kurt Cobain would cancel due to his condition. Instead, he rolled himself on stage in a wheelchair as a mockery of these rumours, then delivered one of the most iconic performances in rock history. This newfound attention gave Kurt a vision for Nirvana's next chapter. He wanted to create an album that rejected commercial polish and embraced emotional honesty, even if it meant alienating fans. In comes In Utero. The mission was clear. Strip everything back, no studio trickery, no radio formulas, no corporate fingerprints. Just 3 guys, a room, and the most honest music that they could make.
And we just wanted to make sure that it wasn't as commercial or slick sounding. We wanted to put out a record that we would listen to at home.
But the mission was now to find a producer who would let them do just that. Enter Steve Albini. Albini was the sonic iconoclast behind underground legends like Big Black and the Pixies' Surfer Rosa. Albini was known for his anti-producer stance. He refused royalties, taking only a flat fee for his work, and saw studio interference as artistic corruption. After agreeing terms with Albini, Nirvana flew to the secluded Pachyderm Studio in rural Minnesota to record with Albini, and it took just 2 weeks. The album was then mixed and sent to Geffen. Geffen executives were stunned by what they heard.
What's this? What is this?
The mixes from Pachyderm were jagged, loud, and defiantly unpolished. More basement bootleg than Billboard ready. Kurt's vocals were buried under a wave of static guitars, assaulted with unfiltered feedback, and the drums thundered like artillery. One DGC insider reportedly labelled the album as unlistenable. Of course, Nirvana weren't immune to the label's demands. The compromise came. Geffen pushed Nirvana to have the tracks they singled out remixed by Scott Litt, R.E.M's trusted producer. These tracks would be Heart-Shaped Box and All Apologies. These would be remixed at Seattle's Bad Animal Studio in May 1993. Litt's touch didn't erase Albini's raw vision, but it brought the vocals up front and softened the dynamics, just enough to make those tracks radio friendly again. Albini was furious, calling the label's response a smear campaign and accusing Geffen of setting him up as the scapegoat. However, the rest of the album remained in Kurt's vision. Now that we've got the backstory, let's dive into the tracks themselves. The album opens with Serve the Servant, a grungy, rebellious track with one of the most comically charged opening lines of an album ever. Teenage angst has paid off well, now I'm bored and old. Cobain scolds his fame, his estranged father, and himself in under 4 minutes. It's quite impressive really. It's raw, sarcastic, and sets the album's contradictory tone to their sophomore Nevermind. You couldn't send a clearer signal that Nirvana weren't aiming for the success in the same way. After this, you get Scentless Apprentice. The anti-corporate message continues into the next messy, grungy, sludgy track. One of the few Nirvana songs co-written by all 3 members, and based on Patrick Suskind's novel Perfume. It tells the story of a man with no body odour who kills to create the perfect scent. It's the sound of a band pushing past melody and into mania. Screams of Go Away perfectly articulate the rejection of Kurt's own fame. You couldn't hit the nail more on the head. Now you get the compromise. Heart-Shaped Box was the first Litt remix track, and compared to the two songs that come before it, this one has a radio-friendly shimmer. Inspired by a gift from Courtney Love and Cobain's fascination with women's anatomy and cancer imagery, this was the album's lead single and only real radio hit, hence why it's the most popular song from the album. With a wacky and weird music video to go alongside, this track is the closest this album came to the Nevermind sound. Right, I'm not going to say the name of this track, but we all know what it is. Misunderstood at the time and banned from several retail chains and almost pulled entirely from the album, this song was Cobain's way of confronting the media, the music industry and sexual violence. He called it anti, what the title is, and an expression of vulnerability and rage. Now we have Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle. Named after a 1940s actress who was institutionalized, this track mirrors Cobain's fear of being misunderstood and institutionalized himself. Farmer had grown up in Seattle, like Cobain, and presented a perfect stand-in for his own public martyrdom and the struggles that he had gone through with getting clean. It does have a sort of softer start, but it still kicks up a fuss. Now Dumb is a softer, more inward-looking track. It's deceptively sweet, with a cello part performed by Kara Charlie, the only outside musician on the album. The song was originally written in 1990, which means it predates Nevermind, and is one of the few tracks on the album that leans into the more pop-ready sound. The lyrics are very curt, and focus on how he perceived dumb people to have easier lives, being entertained through the mundane. His daughter, however, countered this and believes it was a track commenting on himself. Right, now we've got very ape, and full bias here. This might be my favourite track on the album. The high-octane pace is reminiscent of the Riot Girl movement that Kurt had grown up around. Punk through and through, this track establishes its riff and doesn't venture far from it. Hard-hitting and aggressive, this track was certainly not built for radio, but that's why I love it. Okay, now we have Milk It. Now this track is all out chaos, with crashing distorted chords, topped with Kurt's signature rasp. Milk It feels like a meltdown in slow motion. It plays with themes of bodily disgust, identity and objectification. Steve Albini's raw engineering style is front and centre here, and it's perfect. There's certainly no gloss. Cobain's jagged guitar lines are matched with lyrics like "Look on the bright side," "Suicide," screamed at the top of his voice. Then we have Penny Royalty. So this one was actually going to be the third single in the album, but unfortunately it didn't make it due to, Penny Royalty mixes metaphors with literal references to illness, depression and autonomy. Cobain reportedly wrote it while living alone in Olympia, drinking endless cups of bitter tea. The original Albini mix was later reworked by Litt for single release, but as I've mentioned, it was pulled after Kurt Cobain's death. However, it would eventually see the light of day, with the vinyl version being released in 2014 on Record Store Day. Radio Friendly Unit Shifter is the most sarcastically titled track on the album and is a complete attack at DGC. Radio Friendly Unit Shifter is record label lingo for commercially viable songs. In keeping with the tone of this album, this song is anything but that. Heavy feedback, cryptic lyrics, and Cobain's guttural vocals make this one of In Utero's least accessible tracks. After it was written, Cobain often opened sets with it, using it to signal what type of gig the audience were really at. Tourette's is 1 minute and 35 seconds of pure feral chaos. Tourette's is fast, loud, and almost indecipherable. The lyrics, what little can be made out, are improvised and screamed. The title references Tourette syndrome, though the connection is more thematic than clinical. Originally demoed as a slower song titled The Eagle Has Landed, it was transformed into this blitzed out punk assault in the studio. This song really just makes you want to break stuff. Then we have All Apologies, the album's closer, if we're not talking about the deluxe version. The sigh at the end of the storm. All Apologies was also remixed by Litt, and it was the second single off the album. Written for Courtney Love and their daughter Frances, it's one of Cobain's most serene and resigned tracks. The cello returns here, courtesy of Kara Charlie, giving the song a mournful yet peaceful air. It would become the final Nirvana single released in Kurt's lifetime, and a fan favourite after the haunting MTV Unplugged version, which cemented its legacy as one of the best songs the band had written. Now we've gone through the album track by track, with all its noise, nuance and corporate defiance. It's time to ask the big question. Does In Utero still hold up? But before we answer that, let's rewind and take a look at how the world reacted then, and how the reception has evolved over time. Also, if you're liking this video, please subscribe. It means a lot. Despite the tension surrounding its creation and the deliberate pivot away from Nevermind's commercial sheen, In Utero would actually debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200 on September the 25th, 1993, moving over 180,000 copies in its first week, in the US alone. It would eventually sell over 1 million copies inside the US by late 1993, and this was without the album appearing in major supermarkets at the time, due to its explicit song title, which we avoided, and its talk of challenging topics. DGC had, because of these reasons, also taken a backseat on the marketing, allowing university and college radio to do the bulk of its hype generation. What In Utero had eventually done then was confirm Nirvana's status as the biggest rock band in the world, even when they tried not to be. Overall, the album was received positively. Some called it a step sideways, and others saw it as Cobain doubling down on his refusal to play the fame game. Time magazine nailed it early, saying that this potent new album may once again force the mainstream to go Nirvana. Rolling Stone called it brilliant, corrosive, enraged and thoughtful, a triumph of the will. But not everyone was sold. Enemy questions its legacy, saying, In Utero is a profoundly confused record. It's neither totally a self-destructive squall of hardcore nihilism, as originally rumoured, nor the Nevermind 2 of more recent whispers. It's not a grunge record, since the definition of grunge has moved on from meaning no hope of gonzoid punks to embrace any metal band who wear dresses instead of leather kecks and are a little bit subversive for MTV. Yet, even critics who found it abrasive couldn't deny the beauty bleeding through. If this is how Cobain is going to develop, the future is lighthouse bright, Q-Mag said. The album topped year-end lists at Rolling Stone, Village Voice and the New York Times, and even earned a Grammy nomination for Best Alternative Music Album in 1994. Meanwhile, MTV News coverage at the time featured sound bites about its ugly beauty and refusal to play nice, with clips of fans and critics both stunned and impressed by how far Nirvana had leaned into discomfort. But here's the thing, time has been even more kind to In Utero. Today, the album is seen as a masterpiece of artistic defiance, with modern critics often ranking it above Nevermind in terms of emotional depth and cultural weight. In Pitchfork's 2010 re-review, the album was awarded a 10, which we all know is hard to come by. Rolling Stone, in its 2023 list of 500 greatest albums of all time, placed In Utero at number 173, a significant jump from previous rankings. An Enemy called it the definitive grunge record, unfiltered, unpolished, and completely unforgettable. A major change in stance from them. It has since gone 6 times platinum in the US with over 15 million copies sold worldwide. Nearly 3 decades later, In Utero stands as the most uncompromising and unfiltered album ever released by a major rock band at the height of their fame. Where Nevermind was polished and accessible, In Utero was jagged, jarring, and deliberately difficult. It was Cobain ripping off the bandages, exposing the wounds underneath, emotional, physical, and societal, in pushing back against the pop packaging of their breakout success. Nirvana didn't just make a follow-up, which would have been the easier option. Instead, they made a statement. That defiance has only deepened its impact over time. In Utero has become a blueprint for how to stay authentic under pressure, cited by everyone from Radiohead to St. Vincent as a model of upholding creative integrity. It even sent shockwaves through record labels, making them trust their artists more, especially in the alternative scene. Critics now routinely place it above Nevermind for its raw artistry and emotional weight. In Utero is a reminder that authenticity is key. So, going back to the original question, 30 plus years on, was it any good? I'm not gonna lie, it's not a completely flawless album. Some tracks are rougher, more jagged, and outright abrasive than its predecessor. But the thing is, this was all by design, and that's what makes In Utero this special to this day. An anti-commercial stance from the world's most popular band was the boldest move anybody could make. You can almost picture the faces at Geffen when they were faced with it. Where Nevermind invited the world into the genre of alternative rock, In Utero shut the door and hit them on the backside on the way out. But like Kurt, this album feels to me like a perfect personification of him. He used the record to fight everything that had previously given the band so much success, delivering a raw, unapologetic rebuttal of the mainstream that had welcomed them. But even while doing so, the band still reached incredible heights and still achieved commercial success, as was the duality with Kurt. But as previously pointed out by critics, In Utero is an album that stands on the hill of artistic integrity. Therefore, I believe time only highlights the importance of this album. And while it isn't the band's most successful album, I do believe it is their most important album, and could be their best. So yeah, 32 years on, I do think the album stands up. But let me know if you think I'm wrong. Thank you for watching.